All right, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I hope that the rest of the day is going well and the other sessions that you've been able to attend. And a huge thank you to Amelia and to Elizabeth and to everyone who's put together this conference. And in particular, I want to thank the IT staff because they are working around the clock as they have been since early March on so many things. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you for helping all of us as panelists and presenters. And I'm also going to include a thank you to my wonderful IT staff that actually managed to get me a power cable in less than 24 hours when I was traveling and neglected to take my power cord with me. But I think all of that speaks to the larger theme of the sense of community that we have. And that's why we really wanted to make this panel be about faculty and staff and how we're all dealing with the logistics and the challenges here and why it's so important to talk about wellness across all of our constituencies. I'm Amy Godion. I am the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at Penn State Dickinson Law. And what we're going to do is just each of us will introduce ourselves and then we'll start working through the slides. So I'll turn it over to Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia Smith-Reinhardt, and I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs at the University of Utah.
Hi, I'm Zahar Saeed. I'm Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Development at the University of Washington. I'm glad to be here, and I'll turn it over to Rosie.
Welcome, everybody. This is Rosario Lozada. I'm at FIU College of Law in Miami. I saw some of you at the mindfulness session this morning. It's good to join you. I teach at the College of Law.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So what we thought we would do is just give you a sense of what this session will look like. It's always good to have a sense of the beginning and the end. So we're going to spend a few minutes going through our introductions, which we've done, and I'll speak briefly about our learning objectives and our goals for this session. And then I'll turn it over to Rosie, who will talk about domains of well-being and engage in a little exercise with all of us. And then we'll do breakout sessions, and then we'll come back together to really talk about some of the tools and tactics and strategies for practicing wellness. All right, so our learning objectives today. First, we just want to spend some time identifying the challenges facing all of us and being as specific as we can about what those challenges are and recognizing them. We then hope during the breakout sessions to continue those discussions, maybe about some particular challenges, maybe about tackling fatigue, Zoom fatigue, workshop fatigue, parenting fatigue, whatever the fatigue may be that you're working with. One of the other sessions will focus on wellness, one will focus on adjustments and accommodations, and another will focus on looking at the kind of loss of professional identity and the sense of isolation that we're feeling. But during those sessions, again, we want to share, but we also want to start to identify tools, tactics, and strategies for moving forward and addressing some of those challenges. And of course, the final learning objective here is really to start to recalibrate that sense of community that we're all missing and to look for opportunities to build connections with other educators who are searching for ways to navigate what fall 2020 looks like, but beyond as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Rosie to talk a bit about domains of wellness and community.
Thanks, Amy. So we often toss the word community around. We use it a little bit loosely, and we thought it would be helpful to pause and revisit the definition of community. And a community is distinct from a group of individuals, right? A group can be made up of a number of people who share an interest or a task. It could even be a group of people who live in your apartment complex. But a community is a group of individuals who share a mutual concern for one another's welfare, for one another's well-being. So as we think about our communities, and the panelists, we all met a couple of times and talked about our communities as everyone in the building, with quotation marks these days, staff, faculty, students, administration, everybody who walks into that building. And this concept that we all share a concern for everybody's well-being. Before we focus on what the community is going through and how we can attend to the community, it may be useful to attend to what each of us is carrying, right? So at this point, we thought it would be useful if you to use a word cloud exercise. So if you see a link in the chat, it'll take you to a Pull Everywhere link. And if you can just put in there something that you are carrying. It could be anything, and I'll start. I will share that my father is 91, and he recently had to be tested for COVID because his roommate in an assisted living facility had tested positive. So that was really terrifying, and it came back negative. I also have 2 college-age kids, so I have a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is a big word for all of us these days about what's going to happen. And if someone will allow me to share my screen, I can say what's going on with our word cloud. So let's see. Okay, thank you.
And Rosie, remind me, we can just skip the welcome part, right?
Yes,
you don't need to provide that.
You can skip, and you can just type in your word. So, oh, we're seeing a lot. So yeah, worries, children, faculty, fear, overwhelm, quite a lot, ambiguity. So thank you all for participating in that. Isolation, concerns about children. So I'll stop there, but that was very powerful. Thank you all for taking a moment to focus on what you are going through. And I think at this point, Amy's going to reclaim the screen. Thank you. And as we broaden our awareness of what we're carrying, it's useful to concentrate for a moment on the various aspects that make up our well-being. We often tend to associate well-being with maybe physical exercise or maybe even nutrition, but there are all these components. Our students are starting to learn a lot about this based on the Path to Lawyer Wellbeing Report, but we all need to pause and think about these various aspects of our well-being in our communities. Just to add a little bit of more definitions to this, the emotional well-being involves valuing your emotions and learning to identify them and manage them. And sometimes we push them away in these days, but we also know they don't just go away permanently. We actually need to make time to sit with our emotions and manage them. Intellectual, we all love intellectual spaces, but it's important to also monitor your intellectual and cognitive well-being. Occupational, and we're all struggling with that in many ways, cultivating personal satisfaction, growth and enrichment. And some of our staff are also relating in a very different way with their jobs these days. Physical, I think many of us tend to be very aware of, although we probably should add that part of the physical wellness involves limiting addictive substances. And by all reports, use of alcohol is very high these days. And I also read that edibles are actually very popular in this time. Spiritual relates to a sense of meaning and purpose in aspects of your life. And these days when we're all home, alone, oftentimes with ourselves, we do kind of get lost in this sense of what is my purpose. So making space to reflect on that. And social, developing connections, a sense of belonging, a reliable support network. So in all of these also normalizing help-seeking behavior, right? Rather than thinking of seeking help as something being that is something that is weak or wimpy. It's a good thing to pause and ask for help and normalize that so that people in our communities can ask for help as well.
So what we were hoping to do with that short introduction was to start you thinking about what you may be carrying right now, and to start to identify some of those challenges, but then to go into breakout rooms where we can talk more specifically about one of these 4 categories of challenges, and then to start talking about opportunities and tools to tackle or remedy or respond to some of those. So Rosie is going to be leading a session on cultivating a culture of health in your community. Amelia will be leading a session about identifying processes for adjustments or accommodations to teaching and learning. As many of us, particularly as the news continues to grow and we have to make adjustments to schedules and to how we may be teaching a particular course or how our students may be learning or accessing that course. The session will be talking about those adjustments. Zara will be addressing the loss of professional identity and job advancement. So if you're struggling a bit with maybe those, articles that you were hoping to write during the summer, or with a sense of some of your professional goals and other advancement ideas that you had, that would be a great session to join. And then I'll be talking about tackling fatigue in all its virtual and real time or in-person forms, and also countering the lure of this 24/7 availability that we're all addressing now. So I know we have Zoom links for each of these, but I'm going to ask Lance, what's the best way to share that? Should we put that in chat?
Yeah, I would put it in the chat. I think that's probably the easiest way.
Okay, so I think Rosie's going to do that for us. And again, if you want to, if you get lost somehow as you go out to the other sessions, just come back to this one, because Lance will be staying in this session so that it stays open. And our goal here is to spend about 25 to 30 minutes in these breakout sessions, and then we'll come back from there.
Great, thank you. So in my breakout session, which was, I think, low attendance, because a lot of these things have kind of, many of you have been under pressure to solve them in your own university already. But the main theme was a lot of uncertainty, and how do we figure out how to deal with people who are sort of dealing with uncertainty. And we've sort of talked about soliciting information from students using forms, talking to faculty about their preferences. I think for my purposes, I've really focused this summer on clear and kind communications, trying to be as clear as possible about what is within our unit's control and what is the university's dictates, or what is the virus's dictates. And so uncertainty and sort of feeling that and dealing with uncertainty for both faculty, staff, students. We have a lot of sort of student pieces of this, has been really, really part of the accommodation and adjustment process for us. So other ones that we are sort of seeing come in from the breakout sessions, guilt and having to solve all problems. I definitely feel that in my own domain as well. And tools are suggested there, restructuring self-care, thinking about putting self-care in your calendar, setting limits and modeling them for the people that you supervise. I think that is a really important message to hear. When I heard it mentioned earlier in our sort of pre-planning, I wrote it down. Setting limits for yourself and then practicing modeling for them. Seeking help is another thing that we sort of heard come up in the multiple breakout rooms. Recalibrating how to build community. And we talked about this a little bit in my breakout session as well, but how do we think about what community means once we've taken people out of the building and put them into their own spaces? And how do you recreate that? Because that is such an important part of what law school is, and how we sort of interact with it is all social, and a lot of in-person engagement is built around that community. And how do you keep that? And we talked a little bit in different sessions about creating small sections of 1Ls that faculty meet with, doing one-on-one check-ins with all the students in your class to kind of make sure you know what their face looks like and you can interact with them in a personal and engaging way. I think that's really, really important. Identifying common goals and figuring out how you might create a community in that way. That's kind of what we've gathered from our breakout sessions. I'll offer it to my other co-hosts to sort of jump in with other things, and then maybe we open it up to questions from the group.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia. So we had a range of different sorts of tactics, including social ideas, making tacos or being kind of in a relaxed way, in an informal way together, or having various intellectual kind of points of common engagement, or doing the 21-day equity challenge, which they're doing at, I believe it's Cincinnati, Mina mentioned. I wanted to also just say that two themes that recurred were the sense of isolation and sort of disconnection, not knowing where people were, and the sense of frustrated purpose, like what is the purpose? And the things that seemed necessary in response to those two threads was first identifying that many of us are feeling that way, and we're feeling that way alone as opposed to feeling that way together. So not necessarily the best idea to get together and just complain, but there is some relief to be had in just identifying the common ground there. And then I think the last thought on that is that we actually may need to be creative and adopt things we've never done, and even just experiment with a lot of different ways to build community, to use new technologies, to use new modalities, because all of this is new and we're all cognitively a little confused by how much information is coming in at us all the time. And so treating those things with compassion seems important.
Thank you. I'll add that we talked a little bit also about thinking of our law schools not just as, primarily obviously there to serve our students, but also we're employers with employees who need to also be attended to. And one resource that we talked about was the Path to Lawyer Wellbeing Toolkit that has a plethora of resources with very specific activities. I'm putting the link in the chat that will help your institution, if you want to, become much more intentional about well-being. And one thing we also talked about is not becoming the only, the go-to person for that, because that is not healthy for you. But sharing the wealth in terms of taking, leadership for any of these activities to promote a culture of health in your law school.
I'll just jump in and say I think something that was a positive that we talked about in our breakout session was the idea that actually some of the platforms that we're working on right now, as far as remote learning or remote interactions, can actually be more inclusive. And so that there's a real potential there for bringing in voices and perspectives because of the way the platforms are designed that sometimes are left quiet or silenced in a more traditional setting. So there is, some real hope there and some energy around working on that. And I'm forgetting the names of the authors, but I believe there's a recent article on the Chronicle of Higher Ed, and I'll put the link in here in a moment, that talks about creating 8 steps to creating more inclusive classrooms over Zoom, and it's very Zoom specific. But again, there's real potential and energy here. And as I said to the group that I was speaking with, for me, that's really helpful, right? That's what gives me the kind of the space that I need to feel that it isn't just this hopeless, gerbil's wheel or hamster wheel of every day, as Rosie said, right? Waking up and being like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. And then at the end of the day, feeling like, oh, I didn't get enough done, and trying to move and, recalibrate past that. So I realize we only have 1 minute left, so we did not leave as much time as we hoped for questions, but I know, and maybe Lance can give us a little more guidance on what's the best way to use WOVA to network from here. And while he responds to that and we gather closing thoughts from my co-panelists, I'll put the link into that Zoom, the Chronicle article.
Yeah, with Whova, the best way to connect is, it's been a while since I've used it in person. You should be able to reach out to each other, get emails from people that you're working with, and connect that way. Because once the event's over, the Whova app will shut down in a couple weeks for that event. So you want to make sure you reach out and connect with each other through your law school email addresses or whichever you prefer.
Wonderful. And that's a great point from Jenny. I teach in the cybersecurity space, so really appreciate that that point about privacy.
Yeah, that's good to note as well.
This has been a really, really useful session, I think, for all of us. I just kind of wanted to reiterate, I think we've identified a large group of challenges that kind of center around the idea that Rosie was talking about earlier in terms of community, and how do we feel that wellness both in ourselves and out in the people that we interact with. We've identified a few tools, but I would encourage everyone to sort of reach out to Amy, to Rosie, to Zara, to myself. Our information should be available through the attendees links, and if not, I'm at law.utah.edu. And then also sort of jump into networking. I think that one of the things that we shared in our breakout was call me anytime. The way in which I've leaned on other people at other schools to kind of solve some problems I had not yet run into. And I think it's really important to reach out for the support that you need. And we're all dealing with a lot of the same issues, and we're all dealing with a lot of very individualized ones. And it may be that bouncing ideas for some of them help solve some of the other ones. Thank you so much for attending this session. If you have any questions, please contact me, and enjoy the next sessions. Thank you. And thank you to my panelists as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.